Hey there, friend. Richie G's on the move again. Taking steps to clear the mind, leaving worries far behind, where every path feels like home, and you never walk alone. It's a welcome, open space, lit by kindness, filled with grace. Yeah, everybody get to know Jesus' name. Everybody gets to know Jesus' name.
You know, there is this phrase, a real classic from childhood that usually comes out when you're, I don't know, about 6 years old.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, you probably do. So you have your hands firmly planted on your hips, right? And you are staring down an older sibling or maybe a babysitter who just told you to pick up your toys.
Right.
And you deploy the ultimate conversational weapon. You just look at them and say, "You're not the boss of me."
It really is the ultimate unfiltered declaration of independence, isn't it?
Totally.
I mean, we all say it, or at least we feel it at that age. It's just this foundational human experience of testing boundaries.
It is. It's just pure, raw defiance. But here's the thing I want you, the listener, to really think about right now. What happens when we never actually outgrow that phrase?
Right. What if it just evolves?
Exactly. What happens when the modern mantra of personal autonomy, this really deep-seated, fiercely protected idea that nobody gets to tell you what to do, collides head-on with the traditional expectations of a religious community?
Yeah, you are looking at a collision of two completely different operating systems for how to, just navigate reality.
Two different worlds, really.
Exactly. One prioritizes the self above all else, and the other, well, it demands submission of the self for the sake of the whole. So the friction there isn't just intense, it's actually structurally inevitable.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We have got some truly fascinating source material on the docket today. We are exploring an excerpt from a much broader discussion on biblical restoration and healthy church life.
And specifically, focusing on the deeply complex mechanisms required to overcome modern cultural resistance to accountability.
Right. It's a highly focused analysis of a specific yet incredibly common tension.
Dealing with this resistance is arguably one of the most significant obstacles any intentional community faces today. And honestly, that's simply because of the cultural air we breathe.
So our mission today is to explore how this source dissects this modern mindset of extreme personal freedom. We want to see why it creates such a massive challenge for church discipline and look at the specific, highly nuanced strategies the text proposes for navigating this tension.
All without completely alienating people, which is the hard part.
Yeah, that is the really tricky balance. Okay, so let's unpack this. The source uses a phrase to describe the cultural atmosphere we're dealing with, and I think it perfectly captures the era we're living in.
Oh, expressive individualism.
Yes, expressive individualism. And the argument here is that we are all, every single one of us, breathing this air every day.
We really are. Expressive individualism is essentially the cultural water of the modern West.
Right.
The source defines this as a mindset where the absolute highest conceivable value is personal autonomy.
That's the ultimate goal.
Exactly. It's the inherent, unquestionable right to define your own truth, to curate your own identity, to make your own rules, and crucially, to live your life without anyone else dictating or even critiquing your choices.
It makes me think about how we are conditioned to consume literally everything these days. Like, think about ordering fast food or even how we interact with technology.
Oh, yeah, totally.
You don't just order a standard burger anymore. You order a double patty, no pickles, extra sauce on the side, wrapped in lettuce instead of a bun.
Right. It has to be exactly what you want.
Exactly. And on our phones, algorithms curate a feed specifically tailored to our unique biases and preferences. We have built an entire society around custom ordering our reality.
We really have.
So we are conditioned at a neural level to have it our way in every single aspect of life. So naturally, it's incredibly jarring when anyone steps into our sphere and tries to alter our personal recipe for living.
That's a great way to put it. We expect total, frictionless customizability.
Mhm.
We expect it in our lifestyle, our morality, and our relationships.
Hmm.
In this mindset, the individual is functionally sovereign. So if someone comes along and challenges your choices, even if they are doing it based on shared biblical principles that you supposedly agree on, it is immediately perceived as a threat.
Because it feels like an attack.
Right. The phrase, "you're not the boss of me," is the verbal manifestation of protecting that personal sovereignty.
Because it's no longer just a disagreement about behavior. If my choices are my identity, then your correction of my behavior is an attack on my very existence.
Yes, it is interpreted as judgmental, controlling, and even potentially abusive. And this creates a profound, almost paralyzing challenge for the church.
A huge roadblock.
Because the model of biblical Christianity presented in the source demands the exact opposite of absolute autonomy. It calls for mutual submission first to Christ and then to one another in love.
It assumes believers are members of one interconnected body. Like you are not a solo operator.
Right. So when the cultural attitude of expressive individualism enters the church, it makes the biblical concept of gentle restoration, which the source actually roots in Galatians chapter 6, feel completely foreign.
Yeah, the basic premise of we are responsible for each other's spiritual well-being is just fundamentally rejected by the broader culture.
People view their faith as a private, personalized journey, not a collective, accountable reality.
Which means leaders and community members are dealing with a massive, reinforced wall of defensiveness.
Oh, absolutely.
But if expressive individualism is just the surface symptom, right, the shield people throw up, we need to understand what is actually driving this defensive posture underneath. Like, why are people so incredibly quick to go to battle when someone offers a gentle correction?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the source breaks this down. They refuse to just dismiss this resistance as people being stubborn or inherently rebellious.
Which is an easy trap to fall into.
Exactly. Instead, they identify specific heart issues driving that defensive reflex. The first deeply rooted issue they point to is pride.
Pride. Okay.
Yeah. At a basic psychological level, human beings desperately want to maintain the illusion that we have it all together.
I can relate to that. I mean, if anyone just points out that I mispronounced a word, my heart rate spikes, and I immediately want to explain why I'm actually right.
Oh, same here. We all do it.
So having genuine moral or relational flaws exposed is infinitely more uncomfortable.
The source references Proverbs here, noting the biblical wisdom that a fool despises correction, while a wise person loves reproof. Pride makes the exposure of our flaws feel like a humiliation rather than an opportunity for growth.
Wow, yeah. That makes perfect sense.
But pride isn't the only driver. The source highlights fear as an equally powerful, if not more complex, factor.
This feels crucial to understand because fear comes from a place of injury. We are talking about people who have experienced harsh, legalistic, or genuinely abusive authority in their past.
Right, it's not just hypothetical for a lot of people.
Exactly. That could be in a previous church environment, maybe a toxic workplace, or even in their family of origin.
And so the resistance we see is often a trauma response. It's a highly guarded, protective mechanism. The person is essentially saying, I have been burned by people holding power over me before, and I am not letting anyone get close enough to burn me again.
That is so deeply understandable.
It is. But a leader might mistake this fear for arrogance, which requires an immense amount of discernment to sort out.
So you have pride, you have fear, and then you have this broader cultural distortion regarding the love of autonomy.
Right.
We are trained to believe that true freedom means having absolutely no boundaries and no one speaking into our lives.
But the source argues that the gospel teaches a radically different definition of freedom. In the biblical framework, real freedom is defined as freedom from the destructive power of sin, not freedom from loving accountability.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It really is.
Yeah.
Our culture equates freedom with isolation, like doing whatever you want. But true freedom often requires the safety of healthy communal boundaries.
Defining freedom not as an absence of boundaries, but as the ability to thrive within healthy ones.
Exactly.
That brings us to another major driver the source identifies, and this is a big one. A weak or distorted understanding of the church itself.
Yes.
The text notes that many people view the church as a voluntary support group rather than a covenant community. And I actually want to push back on this a bit, or at least play devil's advocate for the listener here, because this distinction feels massive.
Okay, let's hear it.
If a person genuinely views their church like, say, a gym membership, they pay their dues, they show up on Sundays when they want to feel inspired, they use the childcare facilities.
Right, very transactional.
Yeah. If that is their mindset, isn't accountability going to feel exactly like the gym manager suddenly pulling them aside as they walk to their car to critique what they eat at home?
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy.
It just feels like a massive breach of contract, like
Right?
they didn't sign up for that level of intrusion.
And you are completely right. If the implicit contract in someone's mind is, I am here for religious consumerism, then any attempt at correction is absolutely a violation of that contract. A gym manager has no jurisdiction over your personal life.
Not at all.
But the source insists that a church is not built on a contract. It's built on a covenant. And we really need to be very clear about the difference there.
So how do they define the difference?
Well, a contract protects my rights if you fail to deliver a service. If the gym closes early, I cancel my membership. But a covenant binds me to you for mutual growth, even when and especially when things get difficult.
So a contract is transactional, but a covenant is relational and enduring.
Yes, a covenant implies mutual obligation, deep vulnerability, and shared life. Addressing these hard issues, whether it's pride, fear from past abuse, distorted views of freedom, or a consumer mindset, it requires incredible patience.
Because it's a completely different worldview.
Exactly. You cannot simply flip a switch and expect someone to understand the depth of a covenant community if they have been marinating in a consumer culture their entire life.
Which brings us to the actual incredibly awkward moment of confrontation. I mean, understanding the psychology is vital, but eventually someone has to sit across a table and actually say the words.
The dreaded coffee shop meeting.
Exactly. So if people feel their autonomy is being breached, how does the source suggest approaching them?
The key strategy the text offers is to systematically reframe the entire conversation away from human authority.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the source provides an exact word-for-word script for how to handle this pivot.
They do?
They suggest saying something like this. No one human is trying to be your boss. Jesus Christ is Lord, and because we belong to him and are part of his body, he calls us to help one another follow him faithfully. My desire isn't to control you, it's to walk with you toward greater freedom and joy in Christ.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychological and theological mechanics of that script are brilliant.
How so?
It completely removes the personal power struggle. It takes the horizontal tension, me versus you, my will versus your will, and diffuses it by pointing to a shared vertical reality.
I hear that. I really do. But I have to ask, does saying that actually work in reality?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because think about it. If I'm sitting there already highly defensive, completely convinced you're just judging my life, and you hit me with Jesus as Lord, I might not suddenly soften. I might actually feel like you're just using God as a trump card to win the argument.
Oh, absolutely.
How does the source handle the risk of this sounding like spiritual manipulation?
That is the exact danger of treating the script like a magic spell.
Right.
The source is adamant that having the right words is entirely insufficient if the posture is wrong. They emphasize the spirit of Galatians 6.1, which commands believers to restore others in a spirit of gentleness, keeping watch on themselves.
So it's about how you say it, not just what you say.
The delivery, the tone, the history behind the words, that is everything.
It requires deep self-examination before you even schedule the coffee.
If you recite that script with even a hint of arrogance or a harsh, demanding tone, you will simply validate their pre-existing fear. You will prove to them that you are just trying to be bossy and using theology to mask it.
You'll just confirm all their worst suspicions.
Exactly. Accountability is reframed from oppression by a peer into an act of mutual love, but only if it's actually driven by mutual love. The source points to John 13.34, loving one another as Christ loved us, to underline that this is about fulfilling the law of Christ, not establishing a human hierarchy.
So having a good script and the right posture is great for navigating the immediate conflict. But if a community is constantly putting out fires of resistance, something in the foundation is broken.
Oh, without a doubt.
Preventing this extreme defensiveness in the first place requires structural change. We have to look at the soil we are planting these relationships in.
The source provides a comprehensive blueprint for this. They move from handling immediate conflict to building a long-term culture of receptivity, so that when accountability happens, it doesn't shock the system.
And the bedrock of that soil, according to the text, is grace. The source argues that leaders must regularly preach and teach that believers are saved by grace alone, not by perfect performance.
Right.
Which, this feels deeply counterintuitive if your goal is behavior modification.
Well, if the goal is mere behavior modification, yes, it seems backwards. But if the goal is heart transformation, grace is essential.
Walk me through that.
Think
Yeah.
about the psychology here. If I feel like my standing in a community depends on me presenting a flawless image, I am going to fight tooth and nail to hide my struggles.
Oh, of course, you'd have to.
Defensiveness is a survival tactic in a performance-based culture. But if the baseline assumption of the community is that we are all flawed people reliant on grace, the need to defend my perfection evaporates. Security in grace breeds openness.
That makes a lot of sense. But grace alone doesn't clarify the boundaries of the community. So the source moves from that foundation of grace into redefining the structure itself, right? Teaching a robust biblical view of the church.
Yes, this directly addresses that consumer gym membership mentality we talked about earlier.
The transactional view.
Communities need to explicitly teach that believers are one body under Christ's authority. Mutual accountability isn't some optional add-on program for the super religious tier of the church. It's a protective, structural gift for everyone.
But you can't just mandate that paradigm shift from a pulpit. You can't just preach it and expect it to happen.
No, definitely not. Which is why the source emphasizes proximity as the next step. You have to build real relationships before you offer real correction.
Right. The text is very clear that correction lands much better when it comes from someone who has already invested significant time, prayer, and care into the relationship. They point to life-on-life discipleship and honest small groups as the fertile ground for this.
Trust is the necessary currency of accountability.
That's a great phrase.
Think about it. Receiving a critique from a stranger on the internet makes you defensive.
Instantly.
But receiving a hard truth from a friend who helped you move last month or who sat with you in the hospital, that makes you listen. You know their ultimate goal is your well-being.
But for those relationships to feel safe, the vulnerability can't just flow upward. The source says leaders must model vulnerability from the top. What does that actually look like in practice?
It looks like democratizing vulnerability. If accountability only ever flows downward, from the pastor to the staff, from the staff to the congregation, it mirrors a corporate hierarchy.
It just feels like management.
Exactly. It feels like HR is writing you up. But if the person leading the meeting openly confesses a recent struggle or shares a story about how they recently had to accept hard correction from a peer, it proves that accountability is a two-way street. It removes the pedestal.
It proves we are all under the same rules.
Right.
Finally, to remove any remaining ambiguity, the source suggests utilizing a clear membership covenant, making expectations explicit and mutual.
A written covenant prevents the feeling that accountability is arbitrary.
How so?
Well, when someone is confronted, they don't feel like they are being randomly picked on based on someone's personal preferences. The community is simply returning to the documented, agreed-upon standards that the individual voluntarily committed to. It clarifies the boundaries of the covenant we discussed earlier.
So what does this all mean? If a community actually manages to cultivate this soil-preaching grace over performance, teaching the biblical model of a shared body, building deep, trusting relationships, modeling vulnerability from the highest levels of leadership, and setting clear, explicit expectations, what is the ultimate goal? What does success actually look like?
The source summarizes the objective beautifully. The goal is to create a culture where gentle correction feels like family care, rather than institutional control.
Family care instead of institutional control. That is a powerful target.
It's about creating an environment safe enough for people to help one another shine brighter.
I love that. But we also need to look at the very sobering reality check the source provides at the end of this discussion. Because they don't sell a utopian vision here.
No, they don't.
They don't promise that if you execute this blueprint flawlessly, everyone will hold hands and sing songs. They freely admit that restoration is agonizingly hard, patient work.
It is a profound acknowledgement of human agency. The text encourages relying on the Holy Spirit and praying for wisdom, specifically referencing James 1.5 when navigating these waters.
Right.
But it also acknowledges a tough, unavoidable truth. Despite your best, most gracious efforts, some people will simply walk away.
You can create the healthiest, most relationally rich environment imaginable, but you cannot force someone to abandon their expressive individualism.
You really can't. If someone is absolutely committed to their absolute autonomy, a covenant community will eventually feel suffocating to them. The force emphasizes a critical point for leaders here. The calling of the community is not to make the culture comfortable. The calling is to remain faithful to core biblical tenets and to love people enough to offer genuine, life-giving accountability, even if it risks ultimate rejection.
Our calling is not to make the culture comfortable. That sentence really brings us full circle. We started this deep dive looking at a massive cultural wall, this deeply ingrained modern reflex of, "You're not the boss of me," driven by the relentless messaging of expressive individualism.
We explored the complex psychology holding that wall up, the pride that hates exposure, the fear stemming from past abuses, the cultural distortions of freedom, and the transactional consumer mindset regarding community.
We looked at the exact tactical script the source provides for pivoting those tense conversations away from a battle of human wills, and the immense humility required to deliver that script effectively.
Yeah.
And finally, we walked through the long-term blueprint for dismantling that wall of resistance by changing the soil, building a culture of grace, deep relationship, and explicit expectations. It really is a roadmap for transforming a group of defensive consumers into a cohesive, caring family.
It is. And this raises an important question based on that final reality check from the source.
What's that?
Well, in any community you are a part of, whether that is a church, a demanding workplace, or even just a tight-knit circle of friends, where exactly do you draw the line?
The line between what?
Between endlessly accommodating an individual's desire for comfort, just to keep them from leaving, and risking their departure by holding firm to the community's core standards of accountability.
That is a tough one to chew on. When does healthy accommodation turn into a compromise of the community's identity? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope this exploration into the intense friction between modern personal autonomy and traditional communal accountability has given you some new mental models to work with in your own life. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will see you on the next deep dive.
You are the head. I am not. Culture cries, you're not the boss of me. My heart wants its own way. Pride rises up so naturally, resisting what you say. But your word stands firm forever, truth that cuts through every lie, calling me to die to self, and in your lordship come alive. No more autonomy. Break the chains of independence, humble every prideful part. Under your authority, I give you all my heart. When correction comes so gently, when the body speaks in love, help me not to push away, but receive it from above. For you discipline the ones you love, like a father to a son. In submission I am free, your perfect will is what I run. No more not the boss of me. The body thrives when we align. Break the chains of independence, humble every prideful part. Under your authority, I give you all my heart. Under your authority, reign over me. You're the head. I yield to you. Amen.